you're making people in the Bible, making the people in the Bible look bad. You're not being respectful of the text. Interestingly, Samson, which is the most, really in some ways the most violent, the most sexualized parts of the Bible, people have had no problem doing this. It's just, we know, or we expect it with Samson. When the sexualized stories are there in the story of Abraham, or if they're in the story of King David, then people start to flip out and they start to go, well, you can't show that. And you go, but that's in the Bible. The story of Samson, people have kind of like accepted, oh yeah, we're going to go there. But I will tell you, it's almost one of these examples of the extreme. This is the extreme. This is the worst, this is the worst example in some ways of human behavior. So with that build up, I think we'll share, because I can't wait to get into this actually. Wow. And it's perfect timing if you want to know, because the first part of this we're going to read about has such bearing on the Christian birth narrative, which we celebrate. I didn't say it happened this time of year, but we celebrate it in just a couple of weeks. We're going to see this. So we're going to see this played out in our world. But when you look at the story right here and you look at Samson birth narrative, even those of you who are not that familiar with the Christian Bible, but just live in America, you'll see some really interesting similarities to, even if you know the Christian story of the birth narrative only from Peanuts, only from the Snoopy cartoons, you'll see some things you're going, whoa. You mean there's another version of that story? So let's take a look. And where we left off here was the story of Jephthah. And Jephthah, was the last kind of narrative we read. It just says that he ruled Israel for 6 years and then he died. Remember, he ended up killing or sacrificing his daughter, it appears, as a reward for coming back victorious in battle. He ends up going to war against the Ephraimites, another one of the tribes. And that's not a good thing, but he doesn't get condemned for it. And he doesn't really get condemned for the most likely probable outcome, which is that he sacrificed his daughter. There's no condemnation of it. There's no editorializing over it. And this was the worst thing that ever happened. That's not here. And then we read about a couple of other random judges that we don't really know. Different tribes are represented there. The tribe of Zebulun with the judge Elon, Ivzan, Avdon, and then we get into literally this story. And we'll read about one of the tribes in particular, though there are other tribes mentioned in here. We'll take a look at the Danites, the tribe of Dan, which will actually figure into the next story too. The tribe of Dan, we've already read in the book of Joshua, actually moved. They moved en masse. They moved from the south, or the central part of Israel near Tel Aviv, up to the north, up to near Haifa. And the far north reaches up into where today modern Lebanon is. We'll actually read about that in the next couple of weeks. No, probably not next week, but the week after, we'll read about the Danite migration, if you will. We read about it, just like the overview. Now we'll actually, in a couple of weeks in the book of Judges, we'll read about it kind of like on the ground, what it was like. All right, so Rosemary, if you'd like to introduce us to Samson.
And the children of Israel continued to do evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. And
that's a long time, by the way. Let's recognize that again. If we look at how long this is, I mean, this is a generation that the Philistines are in charge of us. The Philistines were on the coast, which means, again, in modern day Gaza, that area, all the way up through Ashkelon into part of what is Israel today. They had the coastal area and was under their control. But it seems, again, that they also didn't just control the coastal area, but were able to impose their authority on other parts of Judah, Dan, and those areas, those tribes that are in the close area to the coast, the ones that are closest to the coast. Did they get all the way up to the Galilee and to that part? Maybe their influence was felt there, but we don't see it necessarily. We do see a cultural. We see that they did have an impact, because we see Philistine pottery, and we see Philistine influence in statues and in their cultural icons. We see it throughout Israel. So we do know that they had an impact, not just in the south and the central, but further away. And so they were very powerful. We know that they had a different style of pottery. They had an Aegean, a Greek style. So it's very distinctive from the Canaanite and Israelite style. So we really can see the Philistine influence, because it's marked. It's a marked difference. But we know that they eventually became kind of Canaanite themselves. The influence of the area, right? Eventually, they kind of went native, and they started being a lot more like the Canaanites. But originally, they were more Greek. Came from Crete. They came from Cyprus, those islands that were Greek influence. All right,
Rabbi.
And here we go. Yeah,
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Before we get started, I have hopefully it's a quick question.
Yeah.
The Julian calendar didn't start until, 40 BC or something like that. So when we talk about years in the Bible, what are we really talking about? Do they know? Do we know? Scientists know? Does anybody know?
You're talking about, are they 365 days, or
obviously not, but yeah.
Well, so let's say they're close to a full year cycle. So they understood that a year meant all 4 seasons. So they did know that. So are they at 354 days? Are they at 365? They are talking about a year. They are talking about a life that would be about 70 years on average. So they are talking about that. So there's no question that they're talking about 70-year lifespans. 40 years means, again, the better chunk of a person's life. And they know that this is a substantial amount of time. Is it in this case 40 years? Is that more of a symbolic period? It's possible. It's possible that we're talking about 40 years in the wilderness, 40 years under the Philistine control. But it's the point is that the Philistines are able to exert their power over us. We know they had chariots. One of the things that kind of distinguished the Canaanites and the Philistines over the Israelites is that these guys all had chariots, which was a technological military advancement that the Israelites don't have. When they finally have it under King David and King Solomon, it means they're a major player, right? That they're, it's like having today missiles or supersonic airplanes that can literally defend and advance your country. So these were things that the Philistines had, which we didn't have. And so the Israelites definitely at this point in the time of Judges saw themselves as the more underdeveloped people. And they recognize this, even if they're writing it at a time when they already had those advancements. They're projecting their own weaknesses back to this period and say, look, back in those days, we didn't have that. And we paid the price because we didn't have that. It's difficult for us to kind of imagine what that was like, because we live in a country that is, for what we know is the most technologically, militarily advanced country. If you're in one of those countries that's not, and then eventually you reach that threshold and you are, then that's probably, again, what the Israelites were feeling like when they wrote this, which is, yeah, we've now come home, we've now gotten there. But at least at the time when they're writing this, they understand that they're not like that. They weren't like that. And that's a kind of an admission that for whatever reason, whether God wanted it to be that way, or, whether it was just the fact that we were the newcomers to come back to the land of Canaan, whatever, that we were at a supreme disadvantage. And you're going to see, that's part of why God works through Samson, is because we don't have the military to compete with the Philistines. So we get Samson. We get a guy who has supernatural powers. All right, so let's read him. Let's read about this guy.
And there was a certain man of Torah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and bore not. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman, and he said to her, Behold, now you are barren and bear not, but you will conceive and bear a son.
And by the way, this is a motif that we've heard many times, right? All the way back to Sarah. And it's interesting because we're reading about this now in our Wednesday night classes. We're reading about Sarah, and this last week we read about Sarah and Hagar. We'll read about it again with Rebecca. We'll read it again with Rachel. The fact that someone can't conceive becomes literally a divine punishment, if you will. And then when they are able to have a child, then they become it's a divine gift. The word the word in Hebrew, akara, which means barren, that's a status. That's like it's a title. So I usually, when we use the word barren in English, we're talking about someone who can't have a child. But an akara is literally like a status of like a widow. Like we have a word in English for someone whose spouse died. We don't just say their spouse died. We call them a widow or a widower. An akara is the same word. We also, as I mentioned before, there's words in Hebrew for things like this that are, so serious or so important that we actually come up with a word for that in Hebrew. So an akara is a woman who can't have a child. So an angel appears, like we had with the story of Sarah, to tell her to announce that she's going to have a child. There is a difference here between this visitation and every other visitation that we've had so far up till now. We're going to have, by the way, another visitation with Hannah and Samuel. But this, or another barren woman having a child. But this is very strange with what happens now. Here we go.
Now therefore beware, I pray you, and drink neither wine nor strong drink, and eat no unclean thing. For lo, you will conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head. For the child shall be a Nazir to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines.
Yeah. So let's talk about what just happened, because this is strange.
Did they usually vow children as Nazirites?
No, this seems to be a completely uncharacteristic and unprecedented decision that God has on this child. The angel says that this child shall be a Nazir from the womb, meaning never not a Nazir, comes out a Nazir. I've mentioned this before. We don't read the book of Judges usually for Haftarot. We just don't. There's only 3 times that we read the Haftarot from the book of Judges, that we have that matchup on Shabbat with a text from Judges. As I mentioned, the other one was Jephthah, where it's not about Jephthah's daughter that we read. It's about the story of the war that we had with Og for that land, and the history lesson with the Ammonites, the border lesson. Here, we actually read this when we read about the Nazirite laws in the book of Numbers. So when we read about the Nazirite, and so in that Torah portion, same place where we read about Sotah, when we read about that, we read this off Torah, which is weird because like this isn't what a Nazirite is supposed to be. A Nazirite is supposed to do this willingly on themselves. Assumedly, a Nazirite makes a vow to God that I'm going to give up these things. I'm going to give up wine. I'm not going to have any wine, and I'm not going to cut my hair. But these are things that people made, a vow that people made, a vow that they made on themselves.
Wasn't it also just a temporary thing? It was not, or am I wrong? Was it
Correct.
not meant to be?
No, there is I go into the Nazirite rules, and the Torah tells us how you come out of the Nazirite rules, which of course involves a sacrifice and basically saying I fulfill my vows. Look, we don't know exactly what motivated someone to become a Nazirite. You know, we can assume that it's maybe they had a near-death experience and they want to thank God for their being rescued. They wanted something to happen. They wanted something. They were asking God for something, and they felt if they became a Nazirite that they would achieve that. It was a serious goal. I mean, we don't really understand the full context, I will tell you, of what it meant to be a Nazirite. We really don't know. We only have what the Torah says, and we know that the rabbis pretty much didn't like it. By the rabbinic period, they did not want people to go into Nazirite vows. They didn't like this kind of behavior. They didn't like what the Essenes were doing, which were like taking the Nazirite vows and then putting that, on Nazirites on steroids, if you will, which was, not coming into contact with women, washing, in the mikveh many times during the day. All these things the Essenes did were like what the Nazirites did, and just went another level. And so we do have more about the Essenes. We have a lot more texts about the Essenes from Josephus, and we know a little bit about them. Maybe not, I should say, maybe not enough, but we also have the archaeological evidence for what they did. We have their mikvahs, we have some of their places that they lived in. But the Nazirites, we have to speculate why people did it. And again, we can say that maybe they did it because they felt like they had to do it. They felt a calling, right? They didn't want to necessarily become a priest or a nun, and they couldn't become a priest in Judaism because you had to be a Levite. But they couldn't do that, or they didn't want to do that, or their lives precluded that kind of behavior, or their birth status precluded that kind of behavior. They want to do something. I want to do something for God. And so they did this. And again, it could be because they did something horrible in their lives that they want to make up for. And they know they did it. And there's no way to you can't go to jail, there are no jails, but there's no punishment for it. There's like nothing you can do, but you've done it, and you got to do something to cleanse yourself. So Nazirite, we can speculate those are all reasons why people became Nazirites, but they chose to be a Nazirite. Nowhere does it say in the Bible that you take a kid and you make him a Nazirite from birth. So this seems to almost be like an explanation that you're getting a miracle child, but you're going to treat this miracle child in a certain way.
Oh, but Hannah also promises her boy to the church.
No question that there are people who did treat their children when they were born in a special way, right? To some extent, Joseph is even seen as kind of a special child because, he was the child of Rachel. And she couldn't have a kid. We can understand that. We can understand people like, essentially dedicating their child or treating their child special because they're a miracle child. But this literally, as we can see, is going to, without ruining the story, this is going to lay the seeds for the kind of the climax, if you will. This setup is literally almost, again, it says this is God's command. This is what God wants to have happen to this child. But it's almost like it's almost like it's a setup. It's almost like and this is why it's kind of one of those almost like Greek tragedies, that it's almost like this is an inescapable fate that this person has. And it is troubling. I mean, to me, this whole story is troubling, and it's troubling from the first birth. It's troubling from the birth. It's troubling from the minute this kid, comes out. So birth narratives are really important in Greek mythology. We have them obviously in the Bible. They become very important in the Christian story, which we'll mention in a moment. But the weird thing about this story is it seems a little bit closer to the Greek mythology than it almost does to the standard Jewish birth stories that we've had in the Bible so far. Let's take a look. So, but again, he's a Nazirite. He's a Nazirite, which is, again, no alcohol, and obviously no unclean things. So we'd assume that like everybody would, but he's really careful about this. And the no razor, right? And then it also does say, though, that he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. So his mother is told from the beginning that this is a special child who is going to have a destiny to lead us and to be a hero, if you will. So that's also foretold, not just that he's a Nazirite, but that he will have this. So they know, his parents know from the beginning that this kid is special.
Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, "A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of an angel of God, very terrible. But I asked him not from where he was, neither did he tell me his name. But he said to me, Behold, you will conceive and bear a son, and now drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazir to God from the womb to the day of his death."
Which, by the way, she's not supposed to drink anything. And just always good advice for a pregnant woman.
Advice for pregnant women.
Don't stop drinking now. Oh man, that's kind of scary because the consequence of that
Kind of a theme going on about women and drinking because they think Hannah's drunk when she's praying so fervently.
Correct. So definitely, whether women could drink or were drinking, yeah, it seems as though pretty clear that they could.
Thing about women drinking.
Yeah, but this is pretty clear that it's pretty clear that this is a miraculous birth. And one other thing we want to point out, the angel, it says right here, the angel is not seen by the father, by Manoah. Mm-hmm. This is going to be this is an important part of this text.
One way to explain a pregnancy that maybe you weren't expecting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm only laughing because really laughing because for those who saw the last not the last episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but the episode before the last, is Larry David gets into an argument with the Jew for Jesus about the virgin birth, and it kind of made me think about that scene. So again, if you're not watching the new one, it's a very Jewish season so far. But the last episode, Sunday night, wasn't as Jewish as the previous ones. But we've seen shofars being blown. We've seen an argument over Jew for Jesus, and this is I'm thinking about it because Larry says, what's a guy going to say when his wife tells him that she's carrying the child of God, which is again a very Jewish question. Here, this question is even more elaborately told in a sense. maybe because it's for a Jewish audience and only a Jewish audience,
It's
that
elaborately conceived.
the man says to his wife, Manoah says to his wife,
We don't get her name. Do we get her name?
no, we get it in the midrash. Her name is I will tell you, Manoah's wife. By the way, a lot of the women don't get named in this text. She is not in the midrash. She is known as Tzalel Ponit. The Talmud gives her name as Tzalel Ponit. So so she is given a name in the Talmud or in the midrash. It's mentioned in the Talmud. So this scene of, wait a second, an angel of God came and hold it a second. At first, it's a man of God, and like an appearance of an angel, he was like the appearance of an angel of God. So he was a man of God. He was talking in God ways, but he has the appearance of an angel. Very terrible, right? And that's the translation of Norah Ma'od, which Norah can be terrible, terrifying, awesome. All of these words. I'm not loving the translation Norah as for that being terrible, but dramatic. It's a awe-inspiring, at the very least, appearance. But she says to her husband, I didn't ask where he was from, but he didn't tell me his name either. So she at least throws out that he's an angel. We know that it's an angel. So the narrator has told us that it's an angel. So we know it's an angel. She doesn't seem to be so sure that it's an angel. And she knows when she tells her husband this, that the way she describes it, she says it's an appearance of an angel. By the way, if you think I'm making a deal of this, understand that the Bible is not just saying this was an angel that came and spoke to him. This scene is there for a reason. This scene is it's there. I mean, we can't ignore it and just say it's not there. This discussion goes back and forth. You'll see. This is only part of the discussion. This is pretty much most of the chapter, actually, if you want to know the truth, the discussion of this man of God. So I didn't ask. And so let's see how this plays out.
Then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, "Oh, my Lord, let the man of God whom you did send come again to us and teach us what we shall do to the child that shall be born." And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her.
Yeah, so this is kind of weird. So Manoah asks God, can you send the man of the Lord back? Which, by the way, there does seem to be a difference between a man of the Lord and an angel. So a man of the Lord could be maybe like a prophet or somebody who speaks in the name of God, not necessarily divine. He doesn't say send an angel. He says send the man of the Lord back. He asks God. And he says, send him back so that we can know what to do when the child will be born. Now, he's already been told what to do, but you can make the argument on one hand, he wants to know more details. Tell me more, God. I want to know more about this miracle baby that my wife is about to have. And by the way, in the back of his mind, what's really going on here? If this is really a man of God or a divine agent, then okay. But if this is some guy that's talking to my barren wife, I want to, I'm not really comfortable with this. I mean, that could be the possible. All of these are possibilities. The crazy thing is, God does listen to Manoah. God pays attention to his prayer. And the angel of God comes again to the woman as she was in the field. But Manoah wasn't there. So God answers the prayer. God answers the prayer, but he doesn't get it. He doesn't get the proof that he wants. He's not there, which is weird because God will answer the prayer, but not quite the way he wanted it, right? He wants to be there.
He was trying to get Manoah to go into the field to help his wife.
I don't know. I don't know what happened here other than God answered the prayer the way God wanted to answer the prayer, not the way Manoah wanted the prayer answered. We know what we know, at least Manoah wants to see this and hear this himself. He's not there. He's not there when the angel comes back.
I like the part where the woman who has no name gets to see the angel.
Well,
Angel's got no name either.
well
Twice.
let's see.
What kind of storytelling is that?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. But this goes on for many verses, right? I mean, we know the Torah, there's like stuff missing from the Bible that we critically want to have. This running back and forth for an angel is a big part. I mean, it's like this is valuable and this is valuable information. The Bible clearly wanted us to have this story. So here's what happens.
And the woman made haste and ran and told her husband and said to him, behold, the man has appeared to me that came to me the other day. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, are you the man that spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. This is almost funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he does make it back. He is able to get confirmation, visual confirmation.
You're telling it, wait here, I have to go get my husband. You tell an angel to wait.
That's what she did. That's what she did.
That's what
and he goes back and she says to him, the man, she's still calling him a man at this time. The man appeared, and the man who came the other day, he's back. And he went after her, he followed her, and it says, are you the man who spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. Vayomer ani, I am that guy. Yep. And here's what he says.
And Manoah said, now let your words come to pass. What shall be the rule for the child, and what shall be done with him? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, of all that I said to the woman, let her take heed.
So right away he says to Manoah, I already told her everything that I told her, do it. I told her and you do it. That's what he says to him flat out. So the first thing he says, I already told her, I did not need to come back and go through this ritual. So he is literally, at some point you have to wonder whether the angel is annoyed at these two people for bothering him. Now we know he's an angel.
Sounds annoying.
We don't know that they're 100% sure yet that he's an angel, but they want to know. Now, the whole thing is like up until now, she suspects it's an angel. The husband isn't even like really sure yet what's happening. We could say that. Now watch what happens. So he said, everything I've already told your wife, but here's what he says.
She may not eat of anything that comes of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. All that I have commanded her, let her observe. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, I pray you, let us detain you until we shall have made ready a kid for you.
Yeah.
That's kid as in goat, not kid as in baby.
Yes.
Not kid as in the Jephthah story.
Agadi, like Hadgad, Gadi Azim, which means a kid of, if you really want to know the truth, it's a baby goat. It actually says baby goat. It says goat very clearly, but Manoah doesn't seem to know, even still at this moment, that it's an angel. Now, we've heard the word angel of the Lord a bunch of times, but it's not it. Whatever he sees, whatever Manoah sees, whatever Manoah sees, it looks to him, it looks to him still as a man. Not only that it's a man, but it's a man that needs to have some food. Now, you can probably guess what the angel is going to say, because it once again says, an angel, the angel.
And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, though you detain me, I will not eat of your bread. And if you will offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was an angel of the Lord.
So there it flat out says that Manoah did not know he was an angel. And the angel says to him, I will not eat your bread. And if you want to make a burnt offering, do it to God, not to me, not I'm going to eat it. Make the offering to God.
I just
But
think
it's
that,
interesting, even though he knows he's not an angel, he still is gracious to him.
yeah, he's still not listening to his wife.
Yeah, but he also, yes, everything that you're saying is right. But he does seem to need to have, he needs to know that this isn't just some crazy dude that showed up at his doorstep and told his wife she's going to have a baby. So look, I mean, in all fairness, he's been waiting for years and years to have a child. He doesn't have a child. And his wife is considered to be a barren woman. That's not like she's had a couple miscarriages and she's young, but give her time. She's a barren woman. I mean, that's the term that's used for her. So she's not supposed to have a child. And so the whole scene, you can make the argument, like, why should he believe it? But first he's trying to make the angel food, which either he doesn't know or he's still kind of testing the angel or testing to see whether this is really an angel. And that's why when he finally says to him, what is your name? That when these sayings come to pass, we may honor you. Oh, you didn't read that part, but let's read that part.
And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, what is your name? That when your sayings come to pass, we may do you honor. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why ask you thus after my name, seeing it is hidden? So Manoah took the kid with a meal offering and offered it upon the rock to the Lord. And the angel did wondrously, and Manoah and his wife looked on.
Yep. So the angel says to him, well, he says to the angel, I want to know your name so that I can honor you.
Who is that masked man? I wanted to think.
Now, here's an interesting thing that we have had up until this point, which is the angels are not named. The angels up through this period of time have not been named. We've had a lot of angels. Angels have appeared to people. Angels appeared to Abraham. Angels appeared to some extent, actually, to the first person, to Adam and Eve. We assume that they saw the Kruvim that are placed in the Garden of Eden. Angels have interacted with people, perhaps, many times. Enoch, at least, gets taken up to God. Doesn't say that he was with angels, but assumedly the Midrash and the Book of Jubilees and these other books definitely indicate that there are angels interacting. As a matter of fact, there even seems to be angel human hybrids in chapter 6 of Genesis. Look, they look like people, at least sometimes. They look so much like people that we're not sure if they're a human or if they're an angel. They're not sure until this moment that it's not a person, right? So angels can definitely appear like people, but at least up until this point, you do not know their names. We know that from the story of Jacob. When Jacob wrestles with the angel, I mean, the angel says, you can't know my name. And so it seems to be like, at least early on in the Bible, that knowing the angels' names either reduces them or takes away their power or goes against the divine plan, if you will.
But isn't that true for God as well? I mean, to know someone's name is to have power.
Yeah, and this is definitely kind of at play here in still during the time of Judges. look, by the time of the Christian Bible and the birth annunciation of Jesus, and it's interesting because in the book of Luke, it's not just Jesus that's announced, it's actually John the Baptist that's announced first.
Right.
And both of them are announced. In that, it's very clear that it's the angel Gabriel. He's mentioned specifically as the angel announcing this. And so by that period of time in Jewish history, angels are 100% being recognized. They're being named. There are even angels that are assumed to be doing these kinds of things, so that when people went back and commented on this story, it's Gabriel, it's at work here, that Gabriel is the announcing angel, and he's the one who does these announcements. It's his job. That's his thing. So this is Gabriel. He just hasn't been named yet. So people were okay with that, though there does seem to be like the exact opposite inclination here, which is no, God doesn't want us to pray to angels. God doesn't want us to recognize them. The angel seems to say that. The angel seems to say, if you want, you offer to the Lord. Because there seems to be this understanding that, look, if you offer it to me, if I become your patron angel, if you will, and you start offering sacrifices to me, then you're not worshiping God anymore. You're going to be worshiping these angels. And so there seems to be a recognition that this is not the way, this is not part of God's plans. The angels are not there to be worshiped or to be venerated or to be acknowledged even by name. And if they're not, because if they're not off, if you don't know them by name, there's this recognition that they're just agents of God. They're just literally there as God's, like with the way God manifests in the world, but it's still all God. Now, if they're angels, then they start to take on kind of roles of their own. They start to take on behaviors of their own. And there seems to be this kind of like, this is a slippery slope. We're going to go down that. Are we really going down that road where we're starting to have angels that do that, you know, we can kind of, we can pray to, and that we can kind of control, if you will. You know, as Reverend Lynn said, you know, that if you know their name, then you can access them, and you can control them, and they can do your bidding. So this is a problem, and it is definitely at play here in this story, this annunciation of Samson, which is again going on. This is 18 verses now we're at. So they make the offering on the rock, and the angel doesn't say specifically here what the angel did that was wondrous, but maybe now the angel finally like spreads its wings, opens up, turns the light, whatever it does, they're watching it. And they're like, whoa, the angel's doing its thing. Now, specifically, we see one of the things the angel does.
For it came to pass, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And Manoah and his wife looked on it and fell on their faces to the ground. But the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord.
So finally, when he finally
disappears in a puff of smoke.
No,
Right.
Not just a puff of smoke, like literally flames, goes into the flame on the altar and goes up in the flame. That, wow, now we really know it's, so like that moment, he knows it's an angel of the Lord. So up until that point, maybe is an angel. I'm not sure. I don't know. Could be a guy. Now he knows, and now he believes. Right now, that's kind of the takeaway from this. Right now, they believe is what it says.
And Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die because we have seen God."
So it's not just that they've seen an angel; they feel that they've seen God. So when someone sees this type of manifestation, they are changed. Now, here's what he does, or what she does, actually.
But his wife said to him, "If the Lord desired to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meal offering at our hands. Neither would he have shown us all these things, nor would as this have told us such things as these."
Yeah. And that's pretty much the end of the birth narrative. She gets the last word. Manoah actually, from the beginning of the story, is kind of a little dopey. he doesn't get, he doesn't see what's happening. He doesn't even get to see the stuff. His wife does, and his wife includes him in that because he wants to be. I mean, he wants to be part of it, but he doesn't really seem to get it. He doesn't really know what's happening. And on top of it, now that he knows what he's seen, he still doesn't get it. He's still like afraid that this is like, we're gonna die. We saw God, we're gonna die. And his wife is the one who kind of talks some sense into him and says, if God was going to kill us, why would God have done all these things? Why would we have been able to offer sacrifice? Why would we still be standing here talking if God wanted to kill us? So she gets the last word because the whole time she's the only one who's not acting dopey. Now you could say at first, he doesn't trust his wife. He's worried, that she, you could even say worried that she got pregnant by this guy. But she's completely more on the ball than her husband. I mean, she knows right away, or she senses right away that this is an angel. I think he's an angel. I mean, she pretty much said right away, the man of God, this isn't just a guy. This isn't some crazy prophet who does this. She seems to get it. Manoah doesn't. Manoah, even when he gets it, doesn't get it. Even when he sees what happens and realizes that everything that his wife has told him, he's got to follow, and like, oh wow, we've really been called for something. He's still not sure what's happening. He still is now scared, like that something bad is going to happen to him because he's part of this. And she's the only one who's got common sense. And again, belief that she's part of something big here. So this is a very interesting story from the outset because of the role of women and what happens in particular with this woman, his mother, whose name we don't get in the Bible, who does have this, definitely has more on the ball than her husband has. So let's read what happens. I mean, that's the end of, but that's 23 verses, by the way, of the birth narrative. And it's pretty much the whole chapter, because here, the last two verses are the only things that we get up until that time, up until the action starts, if you will.
And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him in Mahanadan between Torah and Eshtaol.
Yeah, and that's the end. That's verse 25. So verse 24 and 25 are he's born, and then he starts to feel the Spirit of the Lord, the Ruach Adonai.
Where would they get the name Samson and Shimshon?
I'm going to get to that in 1 second.
Oh, okay.
But I just want you to see in the next verse, which is the next chapter, chapter 14, and Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman of Timnah, the daughter of the Philistines. So he's already old enough to start getting interested in ladies. What I'm telling you is we just had 23 verses about the angel coming to the parents. And we literally have one verse about what Samson's childhood was like. I mean, literally one verse. And he's already at least a teenager, if not older, by the time the Spirit of the Lord begins to move him. That's it. I mean, we literally get 90% of the 95% of the information, 98% of the information has nothing to do with his life in this world. It's all pre in utero. I mean, literally, we don't know anything about him until he's ready to start his mission. We don't know what happens. I mean, and that's not uncommon. That's not like, he's not the only, we don't know anything about Moses's birth. After his birth, after he's in the basket, we don't know anything about his life, his young life. We don't know anything about a lot of biblical characters. But again, what the Bible chose to deal with was the announcement of his birth. And what makes him what pushes him in this direction is really, it's to some extent out of his hands. And we get that by virtue of what the Bible even tells us and what it doesn't tell us. Because there's a whole lot of Samson's story that's not there. And again, we can speculate why that people felt uncomfortable with the story, whatever, but we have the story as it is. And the story as it is a story of a guy who literally pops up to do certain things, primarily, as we're going to see, driven by his own sexual urges. But the in-between stuff, we don't know anything about. It's just such a strange story, and so, for so many reasons, some of what's there and also what's not there. So let's read. To ask as Gail has said, why is his name Samson? Why this strange name that has nothing to do with God? On the contrary, his name actually, one could argue, is one of the most pagan names in the Bible. Not just because he doesn't have God's name in it. There are other names that don't have God's name in it. But he has the sun in his name. His name literally means sun, the sun man. I mean, that's what his name is. His name is the sun, which was a god. Shemesh was a god. Shamash was a god in the ancient world. And he has a name of a god in his name. Now, again, he's not the only person in the Bible that has a pagan god's name in his name. It's not unique, but there is something very strange about this, that Samson from the very beginning has this kind of role to play, which his mother doesn't have a name, but she gave her son the name. If you read this carefully, it's not just that his father gave him a name or that his name was, it says the woman bore a son and called his name Shimshon. She's the one who called him that. She called him that. She called him son, like S-U-N. And the child grew and the Lord blessed him. So whatever happens up until this point, it seems good. God blesses him. The Spirit of the Lord begins to move with him. That's got to be a good thing. The Ruach Adonai, the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's what Ruach Adonai means. It's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit began to move him. And by the way, if I say it like that, people are going, well, that sounds very Christian. But that's what the Ruach Adonai, it's the Spirit of Adonai. He's animated by the Spirit of God. We actually read about that more and more. We're going to read more and more about the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Adonai, the Ruach Adonai. Because the kings get it. Saul gets it, and then he loses it, and then David will get it. So this is a real important thing. Getting the Ruach Adonai on you is a good thing. So God blesses him. The Ruach Adonai is on him, and it says he goes to Machane Dan, and that is the camp of Dan, the usually military camp, which it says is between Tzorah and Eshtaol. These are places in south central Israel. That's where it says he starts his mission. Now we get to chapter 14, and this will probably be, again, this is our introduction to Samson being Samson. Samson doing Samson-like stuff.
And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife.
A woman who we also don't learn her name. So he goes to this town of Timnah, the city of Timnah, and he sees a woman there, a Philistine woman. And he says to his parents, I want that woman. Get her to me. That's what he says. Get her for me as a wife. Now, this seems weird because the Philistines, we assume, are kind of the city dwellers, the Danites, the Israelite tribes people are kind of like, country folk. Like, who are these guys? Who is Manoah and his wife to go to the Philistines and say, hey, my son would like to marry your daughter, Mr. City guy, Philistine guy. We'd like to marry her. Would that have been a normal thing? Was that something that like people would normally do? It doesn't feel that way. Maybe it wasn't that weird, but it definitely doesn't seem to be like a normal type of thing for someone who we already know the Holy Spirit is on them. We've already been told that. And now he wants to play around and to start engaging in this relationship with a Philistine woman. And he doesn't go and say, I would like to marry your daughter to the people. He seems to go through the traditional channels and tells his parents, I'd like to marry that woman. Let's make that happen, Mom and Dad.
Then his father and his mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you go to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well.
So his typical Jewish parents said to him, aren't there any Jewish girls? Are there no nice Jewish girls from our people? I mean, any of your beautiful cousins? How about any of the Danites, any Israelite? Is there anybody here you can marry that you now want to go to get the uncircumcised Philistine? So again, the uncircumcised heathen, but of course, these are not in the sense barbarians. These are not lower class people. If anything, they're more civilized. These are people living in a city. We would assume that the Timnites, even if they're not big city Gazites, or Philistines from the big towns, they're still Philistines. I mean,
This
they're
seems
still
unusual to me that the mother and the father say, or the
Yeah.
mother and the father do.
Yep, they're
Normally,
clearly.
Well,
you
clearly
just-
she's the brains of the family.
Yeah, clearly the
Right.
mother has a role to play in this. You're absolutely right that the father and the mother are here even at this point.
It's amazing
Yes,
what a smart woman with no name could do.
yes. Now, in all fairness, it doesn't say Manoah and his wife, it says his father and mother. It's interesting that they're identified this way now rather than Manoah and his wife. They're now the
Right.
father and mother. They're now in relation to him. This will actually come back at the end of the story to some extent as well, if you think about it. But at the end of the line, though, I will point out, it says Shimshon says to his father, get me her, she pleases me well. So at the beginning, the father and the mother together say, isn't there anybody? And in the end, he says to his father, get me her, for she pleases him. So it's almost like he doesn't speak to his mother, maybe because she's too smart. That he says to his father, get her for me. And that's what it says, cockily, get her for me. So it does say they're just the father. But the next verse says,
But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought a pretext against the Philistines. For at that time, the Philistines had dominion over Israel.
yeah. And so the fourth verse is the one that kind of gives away that this is all a game. And here it says the father and the mother both didn't know. It says both of them didn't know. So here you can make the argument he's going to go to his father because his father is stupid, or at least not as on the ball as his mother. And he's going to tell his father, forget her, forget my mom. I'm never going to get through to her. But my dad, I can get him to get her because my dad, I can sway him. But it does go back to tell us, the narrator goes back and tells us that both parents didn't know that this was a pretext, that this was all a setup. We know that from the beginning. This is a way to get to the Philistines. So it says both of them are unaware. It says lo yadu, they don't know.
Then Samson went down and his father and his mother to Timnah and came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore him as he would have torn a kid. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done.
Now it says he went down with his parents, both parents again there, to Timnah, and they're in the vineyards of Timnah, and a young lion, yeah, it's a kafir, so it is a baby lion. It's not a big lion, but it's a mountain lion, and he tears him apart. And clearly God is with him when he does this. It says the Ruach Adonai comes on him in a big way, and he ripped him apart the way you'd rip up a gedi, which, by the way, it's already kind of disturbing that you tear up a kid with your bare hands, but I guess one could do that, break its neck or whatever, crush it. But he did it to this mountain lion or lion cub. But his parents weren't there when it happened. They were with him, but they weren't with him, it says, when this happened. This is kind of going to be part of this. It is an important part of the story. Again, what his parents see, what his parents will see, and what they don't see, what they understand and what they don't understand. But what they don't see here is going to be critical for the story of this lion that he kills. So he kills the lion, but he doesn't tell his parents what he had done.
And he went down and talked with a woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of a lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. He sees the lion that he killed, and now he sees inside the carcass of the lion that there's a swarm of bees, and there's even honey inside the carcass of the lion. Now, this is important because this is not something you see every day. Not a normal occurrence. A lion with honey inside of it. It's kind of an ironic, strange, scene to see. A lion with sweet stuff inside of it. Okay, this is going to be important later on. Trust me. Not too far away. We're going to see why this is important. This little scene that he sees, this weird thing that he sees. I do want to point out that what we just read is that he goes down and talks to the woman, which appears like he hadn't even talked to her yet. And he liked her, which means that he didn't just see her. He actually now has spoken with her, which of course indicates that at first that it's purely a physical relationship. This is purely, I saw this really attractive woman and now he's talked to her. And
is that a euphemism for having a sexual relationship?
It doesn't seem to be. I'm sure there's some commentary somewhere that there might have been this, but it doesn't seem. I will only tell you this: there seems to be. I would say it's not likely because of the way the story plays out, but it seems as though he's seen her from afar. He goes and talks to her finally, and he likes her. It's gonna. In his mind, this will work out.
But after a time, he returned to take her.
Yeah.
And he turned aside.
Yeah. So the key thing is that he's coming back to take her, and assuming to take her means to literally now take her as his wife. So they set up the engagement. It doesn't seem like they've had any sexual relations yet, and actually, that's kind of the maybe the point in this first story, in his first story, is he's attracted to a woman. He talks to her. He actually likes her. It turns out he likes her. And now he's going to come back to actually seal the deal. He hasn't sealed the deal yet. So, here's a little bit more of this.
And he scraped it out in his hands and went on his way eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they ate. But he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion.
Yeah, which doesn't seem to be, again, something you're
He was
supposed
supposed
to
to
do.
stay away from unclean things, and that
Yeah.
sounds pretty unclean.
It seems like it's not. It's one of those kind of gray areas, but he doesn't tell them that he doesn't tell them what happened, and but the point is he still hasn't told them what's happened. And this is critical because this scene, this honey out of the lion, is a critical scene in establishing Samson's what Samson's going to do with his life.
So his father went down to the woman, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. And it came to pass, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, I will now propound a riddle to you. If you can declare it me within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments.
So they're at a wedding feast for him and his Philistine wife that he wanted to marry. And they have 30 guys with him that are going to be his crew, if you will, his wedding ushers and wedding groomsmen and whatever, his entourage. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't seem like these are necessarily people that he knew before. But that's what they do. That's what the Philistines do. You have a wedding feast and you have groups of people that you party with. And this group of 30 guys that he parties with are his crew. Now he gives them this riddle. He says, if you can tell me within this 7 days of this feast, which again seems to be what we do in Judaism too, which is have 7 days of 7 blessings of Shavuot Brachot, every day saying all 7 blessings during that week, that honeymoon week. He says to them, I'm going to give you guys all, these clothes, these garments, these sheets and dressing and clothes. This is a pretty big deal. This is a very expensive riddle game that he's playing with them. And he says it's a game. He says right from the beginning, this is a game. Chidan. This is going to be a game. If you can tell me, I'm going to give you this, but you have 7 days to get the answer. But
if you cannot declare it me, then you shall give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. And they said to him, propound your riddle that we may hear it.
Yeah, okay, we're up for this. You want to play a game with us, you Danite Israelite, guy? You think you can play a game on us? We're the big city, well-educated guys. You could see this being a a country, but they see him as a country bumpkin, as a rube, and he thinks that he can trick us. So let's see. And so they say, good, go ahead. And here's what he said.
He said to them, out of the eater came forth food, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. Yeah,
now it's kind of a weird riddle, right? It's a riddle. It's a riddle, which he only knows the answer for. Okay, so there's no way that they would know exactly what happened unless they happen to have seen the same lion with the honey in it. But he's only given them the riddle. They have 3 days. 3 days they haven't gotten it. Still haven't got it. So after 3 days, they still can't. And then,
And it came to pass on the seventh day that they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband that he may declare to us the riddle, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you called us to take possession of our goods?
so they go to the Philistine woman, Samson's new wife, and say, get your husband to tell us this riddle. Otherwise, we're burning you down. Are you playing us? Now, these are Philistines saying it to their own Philistine person. So, first of all, we've been given a view of the Philistines, right? We've seen now the Philistines, what they're capable of doing. They have no issue killing one of their own rather than lose this bet. So that they threaten them. They're literally extorting her, threatening her. And from what we know, nobody knows the answer to this riddle, which is weird because, like, how is anybody going to know this riddle? Look, this is without ruining it for people, because you know how the story is going to go. This is foreshadowing. People forget that this part of the story of Samson exists. They forget that the whole story of Samson and Delilah we already had a version of this. They don't remember it because they remember the Samson and Delilah part, which is very dramatic and very sexual and very, it's a great story. It's one of the greatest love tragedies that we have in the ancient world. It really is. But they forget there's actually, Samson's been there before. This has already happened. Samson's done this before. So that's what they've done. The Philistines have gone to Samson's wife.
And Samson's wife wept before him and said, you do but hate me and love me not. You have propounded a riddle to the children of my people and have not told it me. And he said to her, behold, I have not told my father or my mother, and should I tell you?
Yeah, he says, and we know this. He hasn't told anybody. Nobody knows. And he says, I haven't told my parents. I'm going to tell you. That's his first response. I'm not going to tell you. I haven't told anybody.
And the man of the city, and she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the seventh day that he told her, because she harassed him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people.
Yep. So it seems as though this goes on beyond the 7 days. So something either wasn't told right here on the seventh day. They went to the wife and said, you better tell us the answer. And here it says she wept before him for 7 days, the 7 days, which means that like the whole time she was doing that. So the point is that she nags him and bothers him, and he finally tells her, because it says she harassed him. She didn't stop. And he tells her, and then she tells the people what happened. So.
And the man of the city said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle.
So
What does that mean?
You've been messing around with my wife.
I mean, I think I know what it means, but
yeah, so he seems
it's a
to
strange euphemism.
yeah.
Maybe it
So
wasn't strange to them.
yeah, so he seems to, I mean, Samson seems to be saying that you actually,
You
that you
seduced my
actually,
wife.
yeah, you got the information from sleeping with my wife. So he seems to actually have gone to a different direction, which is not accusing them of threatening her, but accusing them of seducing her and getting the information from her that way, which is interesting because that seems to bother him more. I mean, that seems to be what animates him, if you will, was that she had slept with them, that they'd gotten it out of her that way, if you will. Yeah. So
Why wouldn't that bother him the most? It's his new bride, and they're,
no. The interesting thing is he went there with that. I mean, he doesn't well, first of all,
them of threatening his wife, but he suspects them of
exactly.
seducing her.
Exactly. Now, of course, they're not going to deny it necessarily. He's not going. They're not going to say. He could have said that to them, and they just kind of smirk and go, "Yeah, whatever." You can imagine that playing out. But the point is that's where he went. That's where Samson went. Samson went there, which is interesting because would his reaction have been different if he had known that his wife was essentially threatened with violence? I mean, literally threatened with violence. It's very strange that Samson goes to that place right away. And I mean, look what happens.
She doesn't go to him and say, look, my people are putting pressure on me to tell you this riddle, tell them the riddle. What are we going to do about it?
That's true too. She didn't go to him. She didn't tell him that this is what my people are doing to me. Yes.
He also said that I didn't tell my parents, so why should I tell you? I don't see a lot of loyalty on either side. I mean, most of the time men tell their wives things. They don't go to their parents first.
It's an interesting point because, it's not exactly. Samson is Jewish, by the way. I just want to point out it doesn't surprise me completely, given the fact that he seems to be a mama's boy to begin with. I don't know that this is totally unbelievable, but I will say that have I seen Jewish men behave this way? I will say yes, I have. I've seen them tell their mothers things that they won't tell their wives. So I will say that is a possibility, but yes, I mean, Samson does not show a lot of faith in his wife from the beginning. And the fact that he doesn't tell her these things, and his answer is, I didn't tell my parents, why should I tell you? That's not exactly the way, but I don't know. Like, it's an interesting question for us to ask, that question, but in the ancient world, would it have been that strange? They haven't been married that long. In marriages where people were kind of arranged marriages where they hadn't spent a lot of time together, and maybe this is the third or fourth time he's interacted with her, is that weird that he's trusting his parents more than he trusts her? No matter what, he doesn't trust her because he doesn't even trust, or he assumes that she slept with him and not that she was physically threatened by them. And not only that they threatened her and her father. So here's what Samson does now that he's been ticked off. This is his first, that Samson's now going rogue. This is Samson now. This is how Samson decides to respond.
And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, and took their clothing, and gave the changes of garments to them who had expounded to the riddle. And his anger burned, and he went up to his father's house.
Okay, so a couple of things. Again, we get a whole lot of information about his parents talking to an angel. We get one verse, or let's say, yeah, one verse. It's literally one line. I mean, it is one verse. It's one sentence. It's a couple clauses, but it is one verse, which has his first campaign, if you will, which is that he takes out 30 guys. He takes out 30 guys on his own in Ashkelon, which is one of the main cities of the Philistines. It's one of the Philistine, what they call it, their Pentapolis. There are 5 cities, which included Ashkelon and Gaza and Gath and these places along the coast. Ashkelon, interesting article in JTA yesterday about Americans moving to Ashkelon, which is only 9 miles away from Gaza, but it's become it's a target for rockets and things like that. But missiles, I mean, pretty serious. I don't want to diminish things like that. It's a scary place to be, but people are moving there because it's a beautiful coastal town. It's right on the Mediterranean, and it is more affordable than Tel Aviv. And there's a train that now goes from a light rail that goes from Tel Aviv to Ashkelon that takes an hour. So Ashkelon is a town that is developing, and this is the town where Francine was telling me that Joey was in Ashdod, not in Ashkelon, but they're right next to each other. Ashdod's a little closer to Tel Aviv, but Ashkelon is a city where the article was basically talking about Americans that have moved there in the last few years, and it was actually designed by South African Jews as a garden city, and some of the cities in South Africa. So it is a Jewish city today. In those days, it was not a Jewish city; it was a Philistine city, and it's a city that Samson decides to go in and kill the people to take the clothing that he had promised. So what happens in this riddle is that he ends up using this, if you will, to get to kill 30 Philistines, take their clothing, and now give it to those same people that threatened that he was playing the game with, that threatened his wife, and he's now killed 30 other Philistines. And he goes, really, you want 30 garments? Here you go. He takes them off the dead Philistines. So the Philistines got their garments. They got them off of 30 dead Philistines, which of course is going to create a lot of chaos. It's going to make people mad. It's going to make the Philistines mad. By the way, he doesn't go back to his wife. Just go back to his wife. He goes back to his father's house. It doesn't say his father, only his father. It's both of his parents. It's his father's home, Beit Avihu. It is where his father lived. He doesn't go back to his house. He doesn't go back to Timnah. He's done with them. It seems like he's done with them. So it kind of makes sense. He just killed 30 Philistines. He's not going to go back to the Philistines. That makes sense. I think it makes sense. I don't know. Much of the story is a riddle.
But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had as his friend.
So what happens is Samson's wife is now not his wife anymore. It's now going to be one of his companions. Assumedly, and again, it says it's not just his companion, one of those 30 guys that was his companion who he made these deals with, but one of them was actually his friend. So it says it's the companion, and then it says whom he had as a friend. So maybe one of those guys he actually became friendly with. I don't know. But one of them he was friends with. And that's the one.
My translation says best man.
Could be. Seems to be a little bit of an editorialization there. I like it in the sense that it makes it more fun, but he's another Philistine, it seems, and it's one of those 30 guys. But it seems to be one of the 30 guys who was his friend. So the word re'ehu is the companions, and then it says asher re'elo. It's the same word, which is why I think maybe best man is a little bit too far. But companion and friend are also different words. But you have to almost have a different word because it says that he was actually. Look, it doesn't have to be, by the way. It doesn't have to be that he's any more. This translation actually allows for it just to be, he was a, I mean, technically speaking, it should be Samson's wife was given to his companion, one of the people who was his companion. I mean, that's literally all it says. So the way I understand it is in the basic understanding of it, one of the 30 guys, she's given to one of those 30 guys. That's all it has to be. I mean, it's the same word.
Didn't he kill all 30 of them?
No, he killed
Didn't he
30
kill
other,
them all?
killed other 30 Ashkelonites. So the 30 guys,
other
assumedly
30.
that are Timnites, they're in Timnah. He went to Ashkelon, which is not that close. It's not terribly far, but it's not the nearest Philistine city. He went to Ashkelon on purpose to kill 30 guys and then to take their clothing to give to the other 30 guys. The weird thing about it is that he was one of the 30 guys, assumedly, who went to the wife and said, "We're going to kill you and we're going to burn down you and your father's home if you don't tell us." Guess what? That's now one of those guys is now her husband. That's the plain version of that. The plain meaning of that is that one of those 30 guys that were his companions at the wedding, part of the groomsmen, one of them now is married to this woman after threatening her. That's what it says. So we're going to read a little bit more. We're going to get into chapter 15, but we're going to wrap up in a second because we're not going to finish the whole story, and we got to get to we want to leave a little bit so that the two stories go together, and that is primarily the Samson and Delilah story and the end of the Samson story. It really is. I hope you will see you for the conclusion, but let's read a little bit more.
But it came to pass after a while, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid, and he said, "I will go in to my wife into the chamber," but her father would not permit him to go in.
Okay, so after some period of time, and it doesn't say when, could have been a few months later, but it's now the wheat harvest. It says when. It's wheat harvest time, which is usually around the time of Shavuot. It's the end of the spring, beginning of summertime. He says, I'm going to go back to see my wife. Again, interestingly, that there's a goat in this story too. So think about how we've seen the little goat keep popping up at the beginning with the birth narrative. Then we read about the goat. Well, it's not there, but he tears a lion like it's a goat. Now we have the goat that he brings with him as he goes back to see his wife. He's going to go back, assumedly, to have sex with his wife. Seems as though that's what he wants to do. So he wants to go into the chamber, their bedroom. That's what the word hadar means. It means the chamber is a fine translation to it. Bedroom would also be a good translation for it. But her father would not let him come in. Well, makes sense because we know that she's been married to another guy now.
And her father said, "I thought indeed that you hated her. Therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray you, instead of her." And Samson said concerning them, "Now shall I be blameless in regard to the Philistines when I do them a mischief?"
Yeah, I hate that translation. I do them a mischief. It says,
I get back at them, maybe.
he says, I will do ra'ah to them. I'm going to go rogue on them. I'm going to do bad things to them. Mischief does not does not portray what the word ra means. I mean, ra could be mischief, but it's going to be bad for him. That's what the word literally means. Reverend Lynn, what does your translation say there? The end of verse 3.
It says mischief.
Yeah, that's a horrible translation. I don't know does anybody have what the King, maybe that all goes back to a King James translation. Those are horrible translations because it's literally, I'm going to do them bad. That's what the word ra means. Ra can just be a let's look at the other translations for this. Where does that even come from? Let me just put in Judges 15.
The JPS has harm. Thereupon Samson declared, now the Philistines can have no claim against me for the harm I shall do them.
Yeah, I like that translation a whole lot better. Because mischief sounds like he's gonna play a practical joke on them.
Sounds like trick or treat.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't get that.
There are going to be some eggs thrown in a tree teepee.
Right. Maybe toilet paper.
I like the new international version, which I do like the NIV. It's one of the better English translations. It says, "I will really harm them." so I guess. Oh no, the King James says, "I will do them a displeasure." That's even worse. That's even worse. The I will do them a displeasure. Let me see what the one that you can also go to is, the Revised Standard Version is when I do the mischief. Yeah, so people people have different translations of it that, as you can see, sometimes don't capture the full impact of what he's going to do. He says right now it's going to be bad for them. Look, the whole scene he just had with the father, with again an unnamed Philistine guy, is bad. It's a bad scene. And the whole thing is, the father says, like, I didn't know you left. I thought you didn't like her anymore. I thought you were mad. You seemed pretty mad when you left, right? You stormed out of here. You were angry with the whole riddle scene. You accused her of cheating on you, essentially. And I gave her away. I gave her to the guy, one of the guys with you. Then the father goes on, and this is here, man. This is here. Take her younger sister. She's even prettier. I mean, that's like, there's so much wrong in that sentence. I don't even know where to begin. Where does it even begin? His solution to it is just take my other daughter. And she's even prettier. What are you even worried about? She's even prettier than that one. I mean, the whole thing is
obviously the father is a Philistine.
Yeah.
And the Philistines are the oppressors of the Jews at this time. I mean, why is the father doing this? That's bizarre.
Because he knows he crashed and killed 30 guys single-handed.
Well, wait a second. You could say that, but he seems to be deferential to him right from the beginning.
Yes.
So it seems as though we don't know for sure. We do know that Samson's parents have a field. Do the Philistines have relationships with Israelites that are, they're good enough that they marry with each other. There doesn't seem to be anything like out of the ordinary that there's some marriage going on here. That's one thing. The other thing is there does seem to be this kind of recognition that Samson isn't poor. Samson's not from a poor family. So maybe Philistines and Jews interacted, or Israelites interacted, when they were on a similar social level. So we know that this guy has a farm. He has a farm. They're farmers. They're nearby farmers. Maybe they trade with each other. Maybe they are part of the same collective, whatever, that they deal with each other, right? And so, whatever it is, there seems to be this recognition that they're on there's a respect there. So there's no question that there's a respect here. Now, whether the father at this point knows what Samson already did, which is very possible. But there hasn't been any comeuppance yet for Samson killing 30 people. But yeah, maybe he's scared. Maybe he doesn't want to upset Samson, that he knows what Samson's capable of. We don't know. I mean, we don't know why he is deferential to him, but without a question, he is deferential to him. He definitely
Samson
seems to
is
want to play
peculiar.
him.
I mean, Samson is not normal.
I agree.
Why? So why would you say that so far?
Well, I read ahead, but
Well, no, but
just-
okay. So far, what you've seen is he already is looking for reasons to. He's looking for pretext. We already know that.
he
already
set up
looking
the 30 guys with a riddle.
Yeah. So he's
I
already
mean, there
looking
was no
for-
way they could.
He
Yeah.
he
Right.
also doesn't seem that bright, especially the attitude toward women. That once been given and he can just go in and take her again, and we just share this one, and that's a father's attitude. But all of it, Samson just doesn't strike me as really bright.
Well, he definitely seems to be okay doing some things that we would, by our standards, we would say are not acceptable. It's difficult to know what was acceptable for him to do up until this point. Trying to pawn off the younger sister who's fairer, we already saw Laban essentially did that, or not this way, but kind of said, just take another one of my daughters. We've seen that already. I mean, Lot also tried to, have his daughters essentially be raped instead of the angels at Sodom and Gomorrah. So we've seen this kind of behavior before. But what's so weird about this scene is that Samson seems to be like, what did he expect to find when he got there? I mean, from that standpoint, he's either stupid, crazy, horny. I mean, whatever it is, whatever got him to come back now at this point and say, "Where's my wife?" There
And the
seems
wife
to be-
had been given already. Didn't he know that?
we don't know that he knows that. I mean, it's fair to say that he maybe didn't know that, but the fact that he comes back months later, and we don't know how much time elapsed, doesn't say.
Right.
It doesn't say how much time elapsed. It says after a while, which we assume is more than a week, more than a month. I mean, it seems to imply, and when we have by miyamim, it happened after many days, is literally the translation, but it seems to be like at least a couple months had passed. There's no communication between them. He doesn't seem to know that she's been given to another guy. The father's now told him what's happened. He's now even proposed a solution to the problem, which again, by our standards is ridiculous, but offensive. It's scary. It's horrific. Everything he says is horrific, but he is trying to get out of the situation. But Samson now, the pretext that he has now isn't so much that it's that his wife has been given away, like that he should have. So that's why saying he's strange is interesting, because it's almost as if he comes back now and says, I expected you to make sure that my wife wasn't with anybody else. He's already accused her of cheating. Now he comes back and says, where's my wife? I want my wife. And he says, well, but we've given her away already. She's already been married off to somebody else. So
But see, I don't think
doesn't-
it's that clear up before that she was just given away. I thought that he had just given her away. He just cast her off, and then came back to want to sleep with her again later, and didn't understand why he couldn't.
well, he doesn't know that we have to assume, we could assume, we don't have to actually assume that he didn't know that she'd been married off. He could have also said, I don't care that you think that she's married off. She's my wife. So his being strange, I think, is all a possibility here of, at the very least, or the best situation, he doesn't know that his wife's been married off, and he just wants to come back and take her whenever he wants. there's another
I
possibility.
agree with
which is-
Gail, because originally it sounded like Samson had given her away. But then you read down farther and you say her father gave her away.
Yeah, it doesn't say that Samson gave up any claim to her. Samson didn't say that when he walked out. I mean, if you read what
Right.
it says all it says that he did is it says he went back to his father's house after he killed the people. That's all it says. He went up to his father's house. The next line says he was given to the companions. So it doesn't say he said, I'm done with you. And you can assume, I mean, Dad definitely assumed that. What did Samson assume? Because if Samson assumed that he could come back and then just take his wife, then he's also thinking that at this point, he's still married to her. He still has a claim for her. He still wants her. Or does he know deep in his heart that they have done this, or maybe he heard that they had done this, and now he says, I'm blameless with what happens next. So he's already killed 30. He's already killed 30 people of Ashkelon over being tricked out of a riddle. So we already
And
know
torn
what he's
apart a
capable-
baby lion.
Yeah, we know what he's capable of doing. We already know what he's capable of doing. Now, I want to make this very
Rabbi?
clear. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a bigger question. I thought if you have the Spirit of the Lord in you, you do good things. You're able to do good things, not horrific things.
Well, so far, his acts of strength have been the manifestations of God with him. Yes, we haven't seen people use their superpowers, they're being touched by God to do destruction. But it seems that for Samson, when he is touched by God, that he is able to manifest strength. And I was exactly going to make this point, Cheryl, just now. Everybody always depicts Samson as a big, strong guy. Part of the problem with that is that then he's always strong, and then he's always strong. It's that he isn't normally strong, and that he becomes the Incredible Hulk when he gets angry. Now, the difference is that, again, his anger is fueled and is manifest in this powerful way because of God. And so he gets his strength whenever he gets angry. He's able to get access to this power. So that's the key thing about it, is that you wouldn't look at Samson and go, oh, that guy's super strong, let's not get him angry. It's that, no, he looks like a normal dude walking down the street, and then you get him angry and he does crazy stuff. Like, it's superpower. It is a superpower. So there's no question it's a superpower. You're right. We've never seen the superpower be used to destroy. He clearly has that. God has given him these powers. Is he channeling them the way that God wanted him to channel them?
But isn't that what
really
people
sure.
do? Isn't that what people do? I mean,
that's what
we
makes
have the ability to do something, and we can do it God's way or our own way, or with evil.
Yeah.
Or
and that's what makes this a Jewish tragedy and not a Greek tragedy, is the fact that there's always this question of whether he could have played this out a different way. We know why. We know that he's just said, I am doing this to now have a reason to be blameless. You've given me cause to go to war against you. And that this is what he did. I mean, he literally now came back and seems to be literally now saying, okay, now I get to go crazy. So it seems like he wants to do this. It seems like this is what he wants. This is the way he wants to play it out. Could he have played it out differently? We see, that's what we don't know, is how he could have played this out differently, how he could have gotten through to the Philistines. What's interesting about this story is that he uses the Philistines and he plays in their world, right? He goes into their world and plays according to their rules, in the sense that he doesn't do it as the Jewish general like Gideon does. He doesn't do it like Deborah and Yael. He doesn't do it like those women. He does it. He plays by their rules, which is why whenever I've wanted to do, I think that my conception of how to do this, a modern version of it, this is the guy who lives as a biker because he's in that biker community. He's living like that. and he's not living like an Israelite. He doesn't go that route. He's going to live like them. He's going to consort with these people, and he's going to play their game. He's going to live there in their world. He's going to play by their rules because their rules are broken, and he's going to now take them down inside by playing like them. So they're cheaters, they're liars, they'll do things like that, they'll extort, they'll do all these things, and he's going to take them down from inside, which is weird because it doesn't seem to be like the normal. We haven't read about that before. We don't really read we don't really read about a guy who goes to the other side and does it like they do it. That's what Samson does. So let's read what he does, and that's where we're going to finish off today.
And Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches and turned tail to tail and put a torch in the midst between two tails. And when he had set the torches on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn together with the olive yards.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do, to capture 300 foxes. And there are, by the way, still foxes in the area of Ashkelon that you can actually, or some of these areas, you can actually see foxes.
Also, it's strangely cruel.
Yeah.
I mean, does he have 2 Y chromosomes? What's his issue?
I remember as a kid always thinking that he would be one that would, become a
Serial killer.
We did. I remember that as a kid going, foxes, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm curious. I heard they were jackals. Is that a different version of?
Even if they're jackals, it's not right.
Well, no, let me just look at this very clearly of whether Shoalim are every time I've ever seen Shoalim, they are foxes. They're definitely, there seems to be a symbolic meaning to this. The 300, the 30, that the number itself is symbolic, seems to be representational, right? The threes, but there definitely is. The foxes are even in those days were kind of associated with being clever and having having the ability to get in and out of trouble. Is Samson making a statement about himself being a fox? Look, the fire, they threatened to burn down Samson's father-in-law, his Philistine father-in-law's house. He's now burning down their place. He burns down their crops. He burns down their standing grain, their corn. And he also, it says, he burns down their olive vineyards too. He doesn't just get their grain, he gets their olive orchards too, which are Karam Zayit, means their olive orchards. So it's a very strange thing to do. It is definitely a campaign. It's definitely a terror campaign. It is not it is striking them, not so much in this case physically, but it most assuredly is going to have a huge economic impact on these folks, the Philistines, right? So we're going to just finish up. We're going to finish up with what they decide to do, and that's where we're going to end today.
Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timni, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion." And the Philistines went up and burnt her and her father with fire.
Yay! The happy ending for today, which is that they end up getting burnt up anyways. I mean, this story is so bizarre because like there is no way of there is no way of ever.
You can't get any good out of the story.
And it's one of those stories where it's just like, it's one of those stories that, and it's such a powerful lesson because it's one bad decision leads to another, the consequences, right? The chain of how this happens. And how do we get into this? You know, how do we go down this road of destruction and murder and just brutalization? How is this happening? And it's just like one thing after another. And the sad thing is that, and this is where it doesn't seem a Jewish story, is it seems like it's inevitable. It seems like this is a story of this destiny for this guy to do this. Look, even if you didn't know how the story ends for Samson, it doesn't seem like it's possible for it to end well. I mean, there's just no way that this is, that this is, I mean, I don't even know where to end. We have to end it now because we're just going to get into the next story. And the next story then leads to the next story. So this is just one thing after another. And this is a place where we're going to end now, which again, it's a terrible place to end because the Philistines what did they do? They murdered this guy and the wife. I mean, I guess their justification is that he set Samson off, right? Like, I mean, that's the only justification you could see is that, oh, he's responsible for this. He gave away Samson's wife, and now Samson has this cause to go against us. So
free will gets out of control after a while.
Did Samson know that this was going to happen?
No.
Did Samson know that the Philistines were then going to go kill his wife and his father-in-law? Did he know that was the next step?
No. I probably just thought, I'm going to get even with these guys. And, it's like, hey, tit for tat. We had free will and the thing just kept escalating, which kind of shows, this free will in the hands of humans can, really go down the wrong track. We see it every day.
I'm going to read.
This is what clan warfare is always like.
We're going to read two more lines because that's where we got to read two more lines. Just read these last two lines, Rosemary.
And Samson said to them, if this is what you have done, I will be avenged on you, and after that I will cease. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock Etam.
Yeah, well, that's where we're going to finish.
Was this
That's
the
where
job
story will conclude.
they used, or that's later?
Yeah, we're about to get to the jawbone. That's what we're reading next week. So he goes and kills more. He goes and kills more people, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to be done. I'll be done." Now you and I know he's not done. There's no way he could be done there, and he goes on another murderous rampage.
Oh,
and what does he do? He goes and lives in the mountains. He leaves, and he basically says, "Okay, I'm done. I'll be done. I'm going to go now. I'm going to take my justice, and then I'll be done." Now, of course, that's ridiculous, but that's where we're going to finish. That's where we'll finish until next week.
Okay.
And yes, and this is the jawbone of the ass scene coming up, which is, if not the greatest scene of strength. It's one of them. It's definitely going to be one of Samson's main one. But I will tell you this: it is a, as Don just says, one. This is one after another. One bad decision leading to another bad decision, leading to another bad decision, and it is a tragedy for everybody. And it is a story again that people forget. That they forget this part of the story. They forget that Samson already did have a wife. He already did get betrayed by his wife. He already did go on a murderous rampage to get clothing to make up for a bad bet. He was tricked. He was all these things that then again come back up next week.
And that's what makes it
It's
so
already been
Greek.
there.
That's what makes it so Greek is his,
All that solar imagery.
the solar imagery, but
Lion
also
and
the
the
hubris.
honey and
Just,
the fact that his power waxes and wanes.
it's very Greek.
But the jawbone lesson does have a modern lesson in sales. Heard that story. What is it? Samson killed thousands of Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. And today, thousands of sales are killed with the same weapon. That's a lesson for salespeople. They always seem to bring into the story.
All right, we'll come back and hear that next week. Everybody, take care. It's great having you all today with us on the Samson story, and let's make better choices than Samson did.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks. Great seeing you all. Take
Thank
care.
you.